Yep.
Okay.
They're
There you
good.
go.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start letting people in, if that's good
Good
with
idea.
you all.
Good idea.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Here we go.
No, I'm on Zoom.
She got in, but not into the business school or university.
Hello. Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
Hello.
Casey. I'm just
Emily.
going to give
Hello, Emily.
people a couple minutes to get in before we start. We had about 40 people sign up for this discussion
Great.
this evening.
Good.
Yeah, as I said earlier, before some of you joined us, this is an important issue on Aquidneck Island. Plastic, bottles, all that stuff.
Microplastics.
Ranks very high if you survey folks. I did a constituent survey in January, and this was like, 89% of the people made it number one. I mean, it was just off the charts.
It's a real problem. And I know I'm hearing so much about it from a trash perspective. I mean, not just the nips, but just trash in general. There's plastic everywhere. It's on the beaches, it's on the roadsides. People are just really have had enough.
Yes, they have.
Well, I think about half the people that signed up are with us in the room. And I will keep an eye on people coming in and admit them as we go. But it is 6:31. Lauren, do you want to kick us off tonight?
I'll start it off. Yeah. Okay. So welcome everybody this evening. This is a regular meeting of the Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus, which was an idea that Terry and I came up with about 3 years ago. We were very interested we know that environment, climate issues really rank very high on Aquidneck Island. And we wanted to really attempt to build like an island-wide presence and perspective and voice on these issues. And we meet usually about every 6 weeks. We probably have about 6 or 7 meetings a year on a variety of topics. We take suggestions from folks if there's things they want to hear. We bring on guests and talk about pending legislation or important climate news, or we've had Senator Whitehouse on twice, and we bring on special guests. And it's really turned out to be a pretty successful event on Sunday evening. So we want to thank you all for joining us. We knew that Terry and I both sit on the House Environment Committee, and Michelle, you joined us this year there too, didn't you? Michelle McGough from Portsmouth.
Yes, that's right.
So we have 3 House members on this call that sit on environment. And we know that this issue is very important, and we're going to be hearing a variety of bills about plastic and managing waste. And that's what tonight's discussion is about. So we have 2 guests this evening. We have Kevin Boudreau from Zero Waste. Is that what it's called, Kevin? Do I have that right?
Just Zero.
Just Zero, yes. And Kevin's been around working on this issue for a variety of organizations for years. And so he has a background in this and will set the stage on a variety of bills. Michelle, we invited Representative McGaugh. She has a couple of special bills on waste management. One is on banning the burning of plastic, which is called pyrolysis, and she'll talk about that. We have, before I turn it over to Kevin, there's about 6 bills here that we know as of now that are of interest on this topic. We have, and I'll put the bill numbers in the chat box as the presentation goes on. We have a bill to ban styrofoam. We have a bill to create a return deposit on nip bottles. We have a bottle bill. Michelle has her pyrolysis bill. Michelle also has a bill that would attach on. Last year, we passed a single straw provision where you had to be asked in places if you wanted to use single straws. And now she has added ready-to-eat utensils to that, and she'll talk about that bill, expanding that. And then we also have a bill on what's called extended producer responsibility, which is a fairly complex topic that requires that the producer of foods and products that come in containers participate in the collection of those bottles. And we already have that in Rhode Island, particularly on mattresses and paint, where those products are returned to the producer to recycle them. And so that's a much more complicated topic that's been around for about 10 years. So those are the 6 bills that I think at this point in time are speaking to these issues. And like I said, I will put all the bill numbers in the chat box in case people want to go read them. So, and I know Kevin is pretty much an expert on most of these topics. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Unless Terry, did you want to say anything?
I did want to recognize we have Senator Linda Yuzafuja
Yes,
with
we
us
do.
this evening. So I
Yes,
just
we do.
wanted to welcome Linda.
Yep.
And
saw that.
I think all these bills are probably have Senate companion bills. And I just welcome everybody. I'm glad there's so much interest in this topic. So
Yeah, we'll
with
take
that,
questions at the end. We'll take some
Yeah,
questions at the
we'll
end. so
have
hold on
plenty
to
of
it.
time for that. Yes.
So, Kevin, it's up to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rep. Corcoran. Thank you, Rep. Carson, for inviting me here tonight, and to all of you for being here. Thank you also to Representative McGaugh and Senator Uchifusa for joining us tonight to discuss, as Representative Carson mentioned, a very important topic, or topics, as the case may be, because our plastic problem really is multifaceted. It impacts our lives in so many different ways, and I will get into a lot of that shortly. To start, again, my name is Kevin Boutros. I am the advocacy director with an organization called Just Zero. We are a relatively new nonprofit organization that is working across the country alongside communities, policymakers, scientists, educators, and others to implement just and equitable zero waste solutions. Before I helped found Just Zero, I was a senior attorney here in Rhode Island at Conservation Law Foundation, working on these same issues, waste, plastic, so on and so forth. Living in Providence, Rhode Island, and we'll sorry, go ahead.
I thought your sound got a little bit hazy for a minute. Did anybody else notice that, or was that just on my end?
Yes.
Yes, and so
Yeah.
I would ask everybody to go on mute if you're not speaking, because that usually will help the speaker with clarity. Thank you.
We are recording this also because we publicize this on our website, so everybody should know that as well.
All right,
Okay.
please let me know if there's any other kind of issues with sound, etc. I will do the chat, or just butt in. I want to make sure that it won't continue to cut off. Hopefully it cooperates. So plastics, really important topic. Like I said, multifaceted, because the plastic pollution problem impacts our lives in so many different ways. Usually when we think of plastic pollution, we think of plastic bags, we think of plastic bottles, we think of straws and pieces of styrofoam washing up on the shore, or ending up in roadways, or in rivers, or in our parks. And that is a huge part of the problem. That plastic pollution in our environment has significant deleterious effects. It harms wildlife. It hurts, frankly, the tourism industry and Rhode Island's economy. It has a big impact on our day-to-day lives. But it is just one of the myriad ways in which plastics are damaging our environment, harming our communities, and fueling our climate crisis. And so I'll start on the climate piece, because climate damage and plastic pollution are really inseparable. Plastics, after all, are a fossil fuel product. More than 99% of the plastics in our lives are made from fossil fuels. In this country, they're mostly sourced from fracked gas. And plastics are increasingly a lifeline for the fossil fuel industry, or plan B for the fossil fuel industry, as we often say. as we phase fossil fuels out of our cars and our buses, and we wean off fossil fuels to heat our homes, the industry is looking ahead at their next big source of profit, and it's plastics. They are relying on plastics to protect their bottom line. And we can see that in the growth and really the surge of plastics production over the last few decades. Right now, across the world, we're making more than 400 million tons of plastics every single year. Most of that plastic is single-use plastic. It's the plastic that comes wrapped around our food, that our soda bottles are made out of. It's plastic wrap, it's plastic packaging. It's what Amazon stuffs into all of the boxes and other packages that they send us. Single-use plastics are everywhere, and they are a profit margin for the fossil fuel industry. At every stage of the plastics life cycle, plastics are damaging to our climate, they're toxic for our environment, and they harm and poison communities. And so that, again, starts at the extraction stage, because these are fossil fuels that we're talking about. And we're talking about fracking in this country, and the damage that fracking has done to water supply, to communities, to air quality throughout the country is well documented at this point. And then the damage continues from there, because the materials that are extracted from the ground through fracking wells need to be refined into petrochemicals. Those petrochemicals then need to be turned into plastic resins. Those plastic resins are then turned into plastic products. All of those things happen at energy intensive and highly polluting facilities. And most of those facilities are in environmental justice communities, primarily communities of color and low-income communities throughout this country. So we see at the early stages of plastics production that plastics are wreaking havoc on our climate and our environment before the plastic products even enter our lives, and before those plastic products all too often end up in our waterways, end up as litter, etc. The kind of toxicity of the full life cycle of plastics has certainly been highlighted of late by the train derailment disaster in East Palestine, Ohio. One of the biggest causes of harm as a result of that disaster is the spilling and then open burning of vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is a precursor to PVC plastic, polyvinyl chloride. There are also a number of other plastic precursors and petrochemicals used to make plastics that spilled as a result of that train derailment. There's frankly no way to produce 400 million tons of plastic a year in this world without those types of toxic, I would call them mishaps, but they're not mishaps. They're frankly a part of the petrochemical industry's plan for business. They plan for these types of tragedies, and they happen with regularity. East Palestine, Ohio is just the latest one that we've heard about. And so when we look at the plastic problem, we really have to kind of look at both ends of the problem. We have to start up front by reducing the amount of plastics that we're making. We then have to also look at the back end to see what can we do to improve recycling, what can we do to keep plastics out of our environment at the end of the day, keep those bottles, keep those straws and pieces of styrofoam off our shorelines, and what can we do to avoid the worst of the plastic disposal technologies. Things that Representative Carson mentioned earlier, like pyrolysis, the burning of plastics, which only deepen our dependence on single-use plastics and make plastic pollution worse. And so I'd like to just briefly mention two of Just Zero's big priorities in this legislative session that we hope can address the plastic problem, again, from both ends. Reduce the demand for plastics up front and try to avoid some of the worst plastic disposal problems at the end of this plastics life cycle. So when it comes to the former, reducing demand for plastics up front, we think that Rhode Island, it is time for Rhode Island to have a bottle bill. A bottle bill is long overdue in the state of Rhode Island. For those that aren't familiar with bottle bills, they're often called deposit return systems. Both Connecticut and Massachusetts, our neighbors, have bottle bills. And they're systems in which customers pay a deposit, usually 5 or 10 cents on a beverage container, and they get that deposit back when they bring the container to be recycled, either back to the store from which they bought it or to an independent redemption center. This type of deposit system attaches a financial incentive to recycling, and it works. States with bottle bills have far lower litter rates, especially when it comes to beverage containers, than states without bottle bills. Connecticut and Massachusetts have had their bottle bill programs in place for more than 4 decades at this point, and the data are clear. They work, and they not only work to keep those containers out of the environment through this financial incentive, but they work to improve recycling and to reduce the demand for virgin plastics production up front. And that's really important. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that this is a highly effective source separated recycling program. Curbside single stream recycling, which we're all familiar with at this point, can be convenient, but it just doesn't work well enough. When we mix all of these materials together, it's hard to separate them back out in a way that keeps the materials clean and allows them to be recycled. Bottle bill states don't have that problem when it comes to beverage containers, because you return your glass bottles separately from your metal cans, separately from your plastic bottles. Everything stays clean, everything stays uncontaminated, and those materials are much more likely to be recycled. And again, we have decades of data to prove these points. If you look at just collection rates, states with 10-cent deposits on beverage containers collect about 90% of their beverage containers to be recycled. States without bottle bills collect around 27% of their beverage containers to be recycled. And Rhode Island is right there on track with those non-bottle bill states. We're collecting about 30% of our beverage containers to be recycled. So we're a little better than average, but 60 percentage points behind where we could be with a bottle bill. And once those materials are collected, again, they're much more likely to be actually recycled because they're clean, they're source separated, and there exists a strong recycling market for these types of materials. One of the other important salient features of a bottle bill is that it is a type of producer responsibility program, which Rep. Carson mentioned earlier. Rhode Island has producer responsibility programs for things like mattresses and paint. There's a bill that's been introduced this year that would create a producer responsibility program, a much larger producer responsibility program for all sorts of packaging. But a bottle bill is a very focused producer responsibility program just for beverage containers, because these systems are funded by the beverage industry. Under high functioning bottle bills, the beverage industry pays a separate handling fee to fund the collection and sorting of beverage containers. And they're the ones, the beverage distributors are the ones that have to come back to retailers, to redemption centers to pick up the containers, to then send them off to recycling companies. It puts the onus on the companies that are profiting off of all of this waste to do the work of recycling. And again, the data from other states show that it works, that it's highly effective. Sorry, I see a hand. I'm not sure if should we do questions now? Should we wait till the end?
I think we should wait to the end, but I just don't want to forget to have some comments about that.
Not a problem.
So
We'll come
putting my
back to
work-
you, Nancy.
putting my notes in.
Okay,
Cool.
okay.
So at the end of the day, again, those decades of data show bottle bills are effective, they're good at collecting, they're good at recycling, and the people who live in bottle bill states like bottle bills. polls from over the years in Connecticut and Massachusetts and New York routinely show that people like having bottle bills in place, they like that they work, they want them to be improved, they don't want to see them go away. I mean, that really provides a pathway, a model for Rhode Island to follow. This year, a bill has been introduced in the House that would create a really strong bottle bill program. It's House Bill 5502. We're still waiting for its Senate companion to be introduced, but we are excited that this could be the year for a bottle bill in Rhode Island. Quickly, I want to mention, I want to kind of go to the other side of the plastic problem and mention problems with plastic disposal, the types of things that Rhode Island needs to avoid. I know that Representative McGaugh will speak a little bit more about this as well. But here I'm talking about plastics pyrolysis. We have seen for several years now, the petrochemical industry, led primarily by the American Chemistry Council, which is a trade association, a lobbying group for the fossil fuel industry and the petrochemical industry, try to push on Rhode Island something that's often referred to as so-called advanced recycling, which sounds great. People love recycling. Let's make it better. Let's go for advanced recycling. Advanced recycling is not what these industries would have us believe. Advanced recycling as a phrase is something that was invented by the petrochemical industry, essentially to push back against the type of reforms that we're here to talk about tonight. It's a piece of propaganda used by the industry to fight back against efforts to ban plastic bags, to ban polystyrene foam, to implement bottle bills and extended producer responsibility systems. Again, the fossil fuel industry is dependent on plastics production for their profits. And so they will do anything to keep us hooked on this cycle of making plastics. And advanced recycling is just the latest propaganda when it comes to them pushing back against real efforts to reduce plastics. Now, advanced recycling as a term in theory does refer to a number of different technologies, including, as Representative Carson mentioned, pyrolysis, which is effectively burning plastic. It is two-stage combustion, if you will. Pyrolysis plants take in plastic, they turn that plastic into fuel, and then they burn that fuel. When you look at both of those stages together, you are, in every sense of the word, burning plastic. Advanced recycling can also refer to other technologies like gasification, to things like solvolysis, methanolysis, hydrolysis, all of which are different words used to refer to processes that use heat and or solvents to break plastics down into their constituent components, which the petrochemical industry likes to make sound like a good thing because, hey, if we break plastics down, we can use the feedstocks that we create to make new plastics. That's just not the way it works in practice. At the outset, remember again that plastics are sourced from fossil fuels. You essentially make plastics by combining fossil fuels with toxic chemicals. When you break plastics into their constituent components, you end up with fossil fuels and toxic chemicals. There's no way to do that in a way that's safe for the climate, that's safe in terms of avoiding toxic exposures for workers and communities, or that's safe for our environment in any sense of the word. Now, there are 6 to 7 operating advanced recycling facilities in the country right now. All of them use pyrolysis to burn plastics. But we hear the industry talk about, again, the promise of other technologies, things like solvolysis, glycolysis, these other non-pyrolysis ways of breaking down plastics. But even those lab scale theoretical technologies are toxic. And there have been a couple newsworthy items that have come out about these processes recently that I just want to highlight quickly here. First and foremost is a study that was done by the Department of Energy that was published just a few weeks ago. They looked at all these different types of technologies that fall under this advanced recycling umbrella. And bottom line, their conclusions were that each one of these technologies is worse for the environment than making new plastics. And as we talked about at the outset, making new plastics is a very toxic and climate damaging process. And yet somehow advanced recycling fares even worse than making new plastics, which is the opposite of what recycling is supposed to do. I believe last week, possibly the week before, there was an article in ProPublica as well, written by a woman named Sharon Lerner, who has written a number of really excellent pieces on plastic and plastic pollution over the last 5 years or so. And in doing research for this article, she obtained documents from EPA looking at these plastic to fuel facilities, these pyrolysis facilities. And the information that she received from EPA revealed that the processes that produce these plastic-derived fuels carry a 1 in 4 cancer risk. That means that people that live near these facilities have a 1 in 4 chance of developing a cancer as a result of their exposure to these production facilities, which is absolutely beyond the pale. I mean, a one in 1 million cancer risk is viewed as intolerable. And these types of facilities present a 1 in 4 cancer risk. There's simply no way to do pyrolysis, advanced recycling, any type of process that breaks down plastic into feedstocks, into chemicals, into fuels or waste byproducts, without damaging the climate and without posing an immense risk to the communities that live nearby. And that is ultimately why advanced recycling doesn't belong in the state of Rhode Island. 21 states have now been duped by the American Chemistry Council's campaign to, in a sense, open their doors to these types of facilities by removing regulatory requirements, reporting requirements, inspection requirements. These are the types of things that the American Chemistry Council wants Rhode Island to do. To the contrary, and I'm glad that both Representative McGaugh and Senator Uji Fusa are here tonight, because they are sponsoring bills that would take us in the other direction and proactively ban all of these toxic, cancer-causing, climate-damaging types of plastic burning facilities up front, because there's really no place in Rhode Island for this type of plastics disposal facility. The answer to the plastics problem is to stop making plastics, to implement programs like bottle bills, like extended producer responsibility for packaging, that reduce plastics production up front, improve mechanical, non-chemical recycling, and that transition us to programs that rely on reusable, refillable containers, so we don't stay trapped in this cycle of single-use plastics production and disposal. That was a lot. I went for a while. I think I will. I'll hand it back to Representative Carson, I guess. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions when it's time for questions.
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Michelle. So Michelle, why don't you, he did explain some parts of your bill. Why don't you give the background discussion of the politics of this in the legislature? You're putting it in, what we can expect to happen, please.
Sure. And thanks for having me. And Kevin, thank you so much for that introduction. I appreciate your breadth of knowledge in this topic, and all of your help that you've provided in helping us protect Rhode Islanders from some of these processes that they've tried to incorporate. This process first came to my attention in the first year that I was elected in the General Assembly, when we started hearing, I started hearing on the floor some discussion about advanced recycling, and we had a colleague who was pushing for this type of technology to come to Rhode Island. And at the same time, we were also hearing legislation related to this issue around medical waste, and where they were trying to put in a medical waste burning facility around the East Greenwich town line area. And so these two topics were kind of coming into play in my very first session, and I was very interested in hearing the conversations and how they were sort of intertwined. We did have a House member and a senator who were very active from the East Greenwich community who really pushed back on it and introduced legislation to ban high heat waste processing back at that time. And so they introduced the bill and there was a lot of discussion around it. But ultimately what ended up happening, we did pass legislation to ban medical waste burning. But the bill was amended so that it would only be medical waste, and it was not the original bill that would have banned this type of burning and this type of process overall across the state. And you could kind of see the writing on the wall where they were creating a carve out. So it was just medical waste. So I was kind of keeping my eyes open for what was going to come in the next legislative session. And sure enough, another bill came up. But what they tried to do in Rhode Island is very similar to what they have tried to do in other states. Rather than come right out and say that this is what they want, what they tried to do is to pass legislation to make this process easier. So we have in Rhode Island and in many states, a lot of rules and regulations around the management of solid waste. And by what the American Chemistry Council and the plastics industry has tried to do and been successful in those 21 other states is to change the nomenclature. So rather than calling this process waste management, they have been able to redefine it in those states as a manufacturing process. And in so doing, what that does is it takes away important protections for the states where that has been approved. It takes away things like the public comment process. It takes away reporting and DEM application requirements. So a lot of those safeguards that we have put in place in regards to waste management are kind of tossed aside when this process is redefined as a manufacturing process. And so that's exactly what we saw them trying to do here in Rhode Island. And we kind of saw that process going through. There was a lot of changes. We were trying to determine where they wanted this to happen. And I think that there are several sites across Rhode Island that are actually considering that this might be a valuable process for them. And so we're looking at that. But one of the things that we noticed, just as Kevin mentioned in his talking points, where the places where they're most often looking to put these facilities in are in environmental justice communities, areas, low-income communities, areas that are typically most at risk for some of the most hazardous processes that states have implemented. And we were seeing that happen here in Rhode Island as well. And so last year, we really were pushing back very hard on this. I could see it happening in the House. It ultimately did get passed. There was a legislation that was passed in the Senate. And so as a pushback, I reintroduced that initial MediRecycler legislation as sort of a placeholder for us to start this conversation back up and how we can block it. And just for reference, in case you are unaware, although we passed legislation to ban that facility and DEM did deny the application for that medical waste facility, they are now appealing that decision. So that is back in the news as well, making this legislation that much more important. So I put it in as a placeholder, recognizing that if they change the definition entirely, then we still had some work to do. So I've been working with Kevin on this since that time. And what we decided that we really needed to do was we needed to implement the definition of this process so that it couldn't be redefined by the American Chemistry Council. And so that's what my legislation really attempts to do. And I appreciate Senator Diffusa for putting that in on the Senate as well. So what we want to do is define what this process is and make it clear that this is a waste process and not a manufacturing process, so that the very important protections that we have in place for waste management cannot be sidestepped. But then it goes a step further to not only define the process, but to ban the process here in Rhode Island. And so that would be in effect for medical waste, for plastic waste. It is for this high heat waste process entirely. So that's what we're really looking to do, is to find a way that we can kind of get in front of this, because we have seen what they have done in states across the country. And if we can define it and put our own restrictions around it, we're hoping that that is a way to kind of protect the health and safety of Rhode Islanders, and particularly in some of those environmental justice zones where some of these, where this facility is being considered in Rhode Island.
Michelle, I have a question for you now. The folks on the call may not know this, but we've in the past 2 months had 1,000 bills that have been introduced in the House. So one would say it's hard to know every bill that gets introduced until they all get heard. But have any pro-chemical bills been put in opposition to your bill? I haven't heard of any.
I have not seen anything come up as of yet.
Okay, that answers my question.
So I've been keeping my eyes, and Kevin, if you have seen anything, please let me know, but I have not seen it submitted as of yet.
Yeah.
I have not, and I check regularly because I always worry about that bill being introduced, showing up, and it has not shown up yet this year.
Okay, okay.
You know.
And we did pass the bill introduction deadline. In the House, we can introduce an unlimited amount of bills through the end of February. And then after between March and June, the end of session, we can hand in 3 more bills. We can always hand in bills relative to the municipalities we represent and to the budget and resolutions. There's no limitations on those, but subject matter bills had to be in this past week. So I guess that's a good start that we haven't seen any yet, although the sponsors still have 3 more options for between now and June. So, as we said, with 1,000 bills, it's hard to know every single one.
2,000 bills.
2,000 bills.
2,000.
I went and counted today. It was 1,000.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Maybe I
well,
counted wrong. Maybe I counted wrong.
Okay.
So I see that
1,000, 2,000.
Nancy's had her question. I know she
Yes.
really wants to ask
Well,
it.
that has to do with the bottle bill.
We're having some sound problems here.
Current one is, I don't. Oh, and you cannot hear me. Can you
Now
hear
we
me?
can hear you.
Okay, so I'm not gonna move. I know that part of the problem is going to be, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that having names like the American, this is of course why they've done this, but American Chemistry Council and Advanced Recycling is going to be very confusing for those of us who aren't in this day to day. And I suppose there's no way to address that we could say the American Chemistry Council, otherwise known as, proponents of bad, whatever, that there could be a way to address these things. And, we have it in a lot of other areas also, gun control or other very heady conversations. Any ideas along those lines? And especially you, Kevin, who seems to be the front guy here.
So, yeah, when it comes to the American Chemistry Council, I mean, their name does carry a certain, they're often referred to as the scientists, as the chemists, as the
Right.
people who know about these things, when in reality,
Malarkey.
they're a trade association, they're a lobbying group. I think that one of the things that's helpful when it comes to pushing back against their, frankly, nonsense is to let people know what else they've pushed for. So they've pushed for plastics burning. They are constantly pushing
you guys-
against any efforts to restrict dangerous forever chemicals like PFAS.
So how do we get that to the public? So you guys have got a document that says this is actually what the American Chemistry Council does, and that you must be sending it off to the papers that people read, and then the internet. And I'm talking about our local papers, and our local papers are very effective in terms of people reading them.
Yeah, so one thing that we have, and I'll put it in the chat before we're done with the meeting. It's a bit long, but it's a report that Just Zero published back in December, which is specifically about advanced recycling, but it's really about the lobbying campaign that the American Chemistry Council has been operating under. The
Yep.
types of things that that Representative McGaugh mentioned about the types of loosening of restrictions that they're pushing for, along with the other things that they've done. And so that reports like that, and we're not the only ones to do that type of research, but they help peel back the onion a little bit and really reveal the American Chemistry Council and these other fossil fuel trade associations for what they
Yeah.
are. So I will put that in the chat. And there are other resources that I can send along that front also that like really call these groups out for what they're doing.
Yeah,
Well,
I
to
don't-
be called advanced recycling. What?
Yeah.
Based on what you just said, it's just turning the phrase. It's like, and oh, boy, I don't know any of you, but there are a few political groups that have made a lot of commotion using words that are not true. It's really
Yes.
frustrating.
You know, and I was going to say that I've gotten a handful of emails supporting this burning. I don't know if Terry and Michelle have gotten any, but they've been from, you know, average people. I don't think they were my own constituents. We often get bills from our own constituents or from people around the state. And I got them last month, and they were saying things like, it's time that we tackle the plastic problem, you know, support burning. I support advanced
Support
recycling.
advanced recycling.
Support advanced
Yeah.
recycling is what they're saying. It's
Right.
exactly.
It's just outrageous.
And I will
I'm
say
just-
some of that
Ugh.
comes with the American Chemistry Council and advanced recycling. Obviously, they use those terms on purpose. They have invested a lot of money nationwide in social media platforms, trying to market this as the appropriate option for our plastic problem. And that includes in Rhode Island. You will see it if you're on Instagram or if you are on Facebook. You will see in your advertising promotions for advanced recycling as the solution to the plastic problem, and asking you to contact your representative, your congressperson, your senator, asking you to support these. So be wary of that. Just know that it's going to come up in our local news feeds, and that they are investing money to push this through here in Rhode Island.
Michelle,
That's exactly right.
do you have the Senate companion bill number?
I don't
Windows
know that it
bill?
has one yet. I
Okay.
think they're still working on, bills have been introduced, but there are not, I don't believe it's
Not
been
all
given a
out
number
there.
yet.
Oh,
I'll look while we're here. I have my
Kevin?
iPad open.
Kevin, do you know what the Senate bottle bill, has that come out yet? Or
The
are
Senate
you-
bottle bill has not come out yet. The Senate, were we talking about the Senate companion to the anti-high heat bill? Rep.
Either-
McGaw's bill?
yes,
I
yes.
believe it's Senate Bill
131.
31.
131. That's it.
Okay.
S131.
Great, I
Correct.
didn't know I had a number.
Yeah, it was introduced on February 1st.
So,
Terrific.
I just wanted to go back to that bottle bill now, and then
Yes.
I'll stop talking. But a few years ago, I was in Providence for something.
Nancy,
that
for
didn't have-
for everybody else, can you say what your business is and just introduce yourself?
I have a business in Portsmouth, Rhode Island called Greenvale Vineyards. And we are often dealing with, direct shipping or, something to do with wine and bottling and manufacturing. So that's what I do. And farming and, that you can start your tractor at 7 o'clock in the morning and, everything. But so we have 30 acres of grapes, 76 acres trying to protect. But meanwhile, back about 6 years ago, I was at the State House to talk about maybe shipping, but I was listening to the bottle bill, and I was seeing my friends who run local grocers, the local grocers who run those grocery stores are saying they do not support the bottle bill. And of course, I've spent both New Jersey and Massachusetts. We've had Green Rail forever, but I was a resident in both of those states, and they had bottle bills forever. And it blew me away that I was hearing my friends say they did not, who run the local stores, say they did not support the bottle bill because they didn't think it was right for the consumer to have to pay the extra 5 cents so that they'd have to come back to get their 5 cents back.
You know, Nancy,
So,
there was a group of us from the house yesterday morning. We're on a chat for about an hour or two, and we were talking about this. And I commented that places like New Jersey and Massachusetts have had their bottle bill for decades, right? And so the industry's gotten really smart in those decades. And
right, exactly.
Rhode Island's been a little late to the party on this one. And as
But
a
also,
result, we're up against sort of a different kind of industry. And we're also in a situation where there's a lot more bottles, right? So it's become a more complicated problem against a much more geared up industry. Yeah.
And because I work with distributors and have to deal with, the 3-party system, I see what control, in particular, alcohol distributors have over, there's going to be beer. Just people who control the food distribution.
Absolutely.
Immense amount of control with their lobbyists.
Exactly. We discussed that at length yesterday also. We had a long chat about that yesterday and Michelle and Terry were on that with me and a couple of our other colleagues. We're very frustrated with that because when these bills are heard, it's sort of like a dead end. And another part of the problem when the bills are heard is that there's a lot of small stores that will be small mom and pop shops that will be affected by these kinds of policies. And so instead of the big guys coming in that have like the multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar investments in these industries that are generating this waste, they send the little guys in to testify before us. So then it becomes sort of like enviros like me against like a small business. And it's like, please don't close my business, please. So it's not a level playing field. We're really up against the wall on this stuff.
It is not a level playing field. And I have to say, I have been on that side of things with regard to distribution. And they do access their small mom and pop to make you feel really badly.
That's right. Exactly right.
So I'm wondering, Kevin, if you have recommendations on how we get past that, because you've got to have had a few other states in this situation.
So there are a few things that come to mind in terms of getting past that, and I want to start with the bill itself because and I totally agree that especially when it comes to a lot of the smaller local stores coming out in opposition to these types of things, like they're really being pushed by distributors, by trade associations, by bigger industry folks. But this year's bottle bill does a few things that really could be a benefit to those, to especially those smaller stores, if they can just get over the knee-jerk reaction that's kind of being fed to them by some of these larger industry groups. And it comes down to two big facets of the bill. One I mentioned just in passing in my earlier remarks, which is a handling fee that's paid by distributors to the retailers, to the stores that are collecting these empty containers. That handling fee is separate from the deposit that consumers pay and then get the deposit back. That handling fee stays with the retailers and it's intended to fund, it's a money that goes into their pocket to help hire the people to sort and collect the containers, to be able to carve out space to hold the containers before they give them back to the distributors, and so on and so forth. And that's an important part of any bottle bill. And our neighbors have handling fees as well. Connecticut, Massachusetts, most states have bottle bills with handling fees. But it's important to remind a lot of these businesses that they wouldn't be doing this work for free out of the kindness of their hearts. These handling fees are a reason that like independent redemption centers open up, because when you're getting paid per container that you're bringing through your store, that is a revenue stream for these businesses. The other important thing that this bill does, which is a little different than what other states have done and to past versions of the bottle bill, is what it does with the pot of what's referred to as unclaimed deposits. So if Rhode Island implements a bottle bill, and if it's highly successful, we would be looking at somewhere about a 90% redemption rate. That means that 90% of the containers that are sold come back and the deposits are collected on them. That leaves 10% of all the deposits out there that no one ever claims. And that ends up being a big, big pot of money. It's been estimated by folks that track beverage sales in Rhode Island that if we hit a 90% redemption rate, there would still be on the order of $10 million a year left in unclaimed deposits. This bill would put that money aside into a beverage recycling fund that's overseen by the Division of Revenue. And that money can then go back out in forgivable grants to the small businesses that are collecting these containers so that they can purchase sorting equipment, so that they can purchase reverse vending machines, so that they can expand their space to do this work. Those unredeemed deposits, that money goes back into the system, and that money can go to the businesses that are doing this work to make sure that not only are they made whole, but they can come out better than they were before on the other end when they buy the right equipment, when they expand their space, et cetera.
That's good. I'm just going to throw one thing out there. Or it could go to the homeless.
Well, you know,
Just saying. I know that because there's so many people who in the cities go through the trash to collect the.
I was going to say the homeless can go and collect those bottles and bring them in and they can get the refund. So there is an avenue for homeless people living on the streets to collect some pocket change from this.
There's a really great organization in New York City. New York has a bottle bill. In New York City, there's a great organization called Sure We Can, which is effectively a redemption center that is largely staffed by unhoused people who make money off of all of these containers that aren't returned, and they have a very it's a really great business model, and I'm kind of hoping that we can get one of the folks from Sure We Can to submit testimony when these bills come up for hearing, or to participate in some type of remote Zoom conversation about this. Because they do great work, and it's the type of thing that shows you when you have these types of businesses, not only these types of systems, not only you're supporting like the green jobs in the stores themselves, but you support this whole secondary economy, which has done a lot of good in states like Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, where people rely on these unclaimed containers to live their lives.
Yeah, and Nancy, to answer your question a little further, Terry and I are really hoping that we can activate the Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus on these bills this year. We have never really done too much of organizing folks and encouraging them to be active. I mean, we do that generally, but we haven't focused it on this bill or that bill. But we think the time is right this year. You know, what else can we do? We know that folks on Aquidneck Island are fed up with waste. There's no doubt about that. And I think you need to make your voices heard to the speaker, to the Senate president. I mean, this is the year to really take some steps on waste, to ban burning and to get that bottle bill. We haven't even touched on the NIPS problem, which are those little small bottles that, which
We
is a
have
whole
so
nother
many
story.
on the way down our driveway. It's just, I'm
It's
supposed
a
to
whole
pick up.
other story about those. I mean, when we had the NIP hearing last year, again, all these small mom and pop stores came into us and testified that it was like 20 to 30 to 40% of their business. And it really becomes a nowhere debate. And when in reality, it is an, up the ladder kind of a discussion. And I think the members of the Environment Committee are going to be more aggressive this year. And we need the public to be more active as well.
Kevin, could you talk a little bit about the NIPS? Are NIPS included in the bottle bill? That's the first thing. And then I know that the new version of the NIPS bill, that there might be some issues as it might compete with the bottle bill a little bit. So if you wanted to speak about that, and there's a couple questions too in the chat. Casey is from Clean Ocean Access is asking about the square footage of the size of buildings. If you could comment on that. And the other question is, are nip bottles recyclable? So I give it back to you.
And Anne has a
Yeah.
question also, so she's next.
Michelle says no.
Okay.
Okay, all right, I will try to, I'm gonna hit the store size thing first and then go into the nips, because the rest of them kind of circle around that. So there is an exemption in the bottle bill for stores that are under 2,000 square feet of kind of retail space. They do not have to take back empty containers if they don't want to. They can opt into the system. I know that some folks, some legislators have heard from small businesses that they wouldn't want to be totally out of the system if other stores are, because if you're a smaller liquor store, then you're not getting that return traffic from people returning their containers. Under this bill, if you're under 2,000 square feet, you can opt out or you can opt in. It's up to you. And again, that's another thing that can potentially ease the burden on small stores. Now, NIPS. H5502, the bottle bill that's been introduced this year, would apply to NIPS. So under this bill, the deposit, this bill would set a 10-cent deposit. That deposit would apply to all plastic, glass, or metal beverage containers from 50 milliliters. So that's really the smallest size of NIP, from 50 milliliters all the way up to 3 liters. So everything in there is covered. It doesn't apply to like pouches. It doesn't apply to paper cartons because those things aren't really recyclable. There aren't markets for them. It doesn't apply to medication. So there are a few narrow exemptions, but otherwise everything that's plastic, glass, or metal from 50 milliliters all the way up to 3 liters includes NIPS. There would be a 10-cent deposit on NIPS. Now, the separate NIP bill that was just introduced would place a 25-cent deposit on just NIPS, just containers that are up to 100 milliliters, and it wouldn't do any of the rest of the things that a bottle bill that H5502 would do. It was just recently introduced. So we've kind of there's some figuring out to do around this. I know that there's been some outreach to the sponsor, Chairman David Bennett. There is some concern about kind of a separate NIPS deposit kind of competing with the bottle bill, when, as we see it, the bottle bill is more far-reaching, would create a more comprehensive system for all types of beverage containers, including NIPS, and has a lot of the infrastructure behind it, like that stuff around unredeemed deposits, so on and so forth. So we'll have to kind of see where that goes. This year's bill does not seem to be just an outright ban on NIPS the way that some previous bills have been. In Just Zero's view, we would like to see a deposit on NIPS and all of the rest of the beverage containers. One state has a deposit on NIPS right now, and it's Maine. Maine extended their bottle bill program to NIPS a few years ago, and the data that we've seen so far shows that it is unsurprisingly effective. There are far fewer NIPS in Maine's environment than there were before there was a deposit on NIPS, because we know bottle bills work. On the question of whether NIP bottles are recyclable, it depends. So if you put a NIP bottle that is a small NIP bottle that's less than 2 inches by 2 inches in size, in your single stream curbside bin, it cannot be recycled. We've been told that by Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation, which runs the only materials recovery facility, the only recyclable sorting facility in the state of Rhode Island. So a small NIP that goes in a recycling bin doesn't get recycled. But that doesn't mean that NIPs aren't recyclable kind of writ large. If NIPs are collected as part of a bottle bill program, they would be recyclable and recycled, because those materials wouldn't go through Rhode Island Resource Recovery. They wouldn't go through the sorting equipment that can't handle small containers. The whole point of a bottle bill is that it's separate recovery. You bring the containers back to a retailer or a redemption center. The distributor picks those source separated containers up and they're sold directly to recycling markets. So when you skip that sorting step, the size isn't an issue, and then you can recycle these nip bottles. Again, something that we know from Maine, the nip bottles that are returned in Maine are sold on recycling markets. So they should be recycled in the way that other plastic bottles can be recycled when collected through bottleable systems.
Yeah, I think Anne has a question. I think you raised your hand if I saw it, Anne. Is that correct?
Yeah, Kevin answered most of it, but I
Oh,
just
good.
want to say the whole idea of nips is really terrible. I mean, they're really for alcoholics, nips. You go to I've been to the liquor store at 10 o'clock to buy a bottle of wine for somebody coming for dinner or something. And there's people in there, you know, that are working construction that are buying nips, and they go out and use like dangerous tools and everything. I mean, it's just that it's not a good concept, but that I'm done with that now.
Right. Well, my attitude on that is that, you know, that's why we can't blame the liquor stores for this, because that product was pushed down from the liquor industry to them as a marketing
Absolutely.
tool. And, you know, it pits, and then again, it goes back when we're in committee hearings, it pits the committee and the, you know, the women on the committee and the members like Michelle and I, who want to do something on this against those small businesses that they've been sold these nips as a, you know, a tool for their industry. So this is why I said, you know, that one of the challenges I think for Rhode Island is that we're kind of late to this game on this bottle bill thing, because the industry has really cranked up in the last 15 years. It's 7:30 now, Terry.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
We have, we've got one more. Christine would like to ask one last question. So if we
Sure.
can let Christine have the last question. And then I was thinking for the Aquidneck Island Climate Caucus that maybe we could, between you and I, we could come back up with a newsletter with these bills listed and maybe a
Mhm.
little, some instructions
Big
on how
action thing?
people can
Yeah.
track bills and, you know, and if at that time we know one of them is coming up for a hearing, we can tell people about that too. So
Good
maybe
idea.
in the next couple of weeks, we could send something out to try to engage everybody on the call.
Good idea. Yeah, we have
So,
until June. It's not the end of the session yet. We still have a good 4 months.
yes. So Christine, what is your question? You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm Christine Stenning with the League of Women Voters, and we have a group that will be heading on March 22nd up to the State House for Lobby Day.
Mhm.
So that we will be doing. How do you see?
Before you
other
go any
than-
further, the House does not meet on Wednesdays.
Yes,
Okay,
good point.
well, isn't that the 22nd? Let me
The
check.
22nd is a Wednesday. The House
Okay,
is
then-
only, yeah,
then
and
let
I don't
me-
even know if the Senate meets on Wednesdays. I would check that
Then let
out.
me guess, I must have it wrong. That's weird because we were given the date of the 22nd for Lobby Day at the State House.
We have committee meetings on Wednesdays, but the
But the people-
House,
yeah.
the House doesn't meet, and right now
Can't
the
find
Senate's
people.
only meeting on Tuesday, so like you
Okay,
wouldn't be able to
well-
come into the chamber to talk to us.
We won't be there. People won't be there. So I would just revisit that one. A lot of
Okay.
people didn't know that, and they planned these lobby days, and then they found out that they were on days that we weren't meeting. We're going to go back to meeting 3 days a week, probably in the middle of April.
Yeah.
Okay, I will certainly raise that with the state league because we met for quite a long time on what we would do and how we would be there and where our table was going to be set up and all those kind of things. So
I'm sorry
I
to
will,
interrupt you.
I-
I'm sorry to
unless,
interrupt you.
unless I've gotten the date wrong, which I don't think I do. But anyway, moving on from that is, so how do you tell individual groups other than lobbying, like the League of Women Voters, here is what you can do to affect change with this? We need what can we do other than say we agree, we're here, we'll support?
You can testify and you can,
letters.
write to, you know, the chairman, the committee chair, you can write to your legislator. In your case, we're here.
I know.
But you could write to your senator, Senator Oyer, and let her know. So I think that is really the best way to advocate. And if you are in Providence, you can come by and talk to people and
Okay.
let us know too. Any other ideas, Lauren?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, follow the bills. That's a little bit of a job, and tracking them down and really pushing at the end. particularly in May.
Right.
You know, like if we get like 30 emails in 2 or 3 days on a bill, well, like that we pay attention.
Right. And some
But
people.
we're already on this, so you don't have to write to
Right.
us. We're
Right,
already
but
on
some,
this.
but some
So-
people will write to the whole chamber. And, you know, to be honest, I always look down to see if they're my constituent or not, but it does give you a sense of what's important to, you know, Rhode Islanders writ large when you get, you know, a lot of emails on a similar topic, even when they are people not in your district. You
Yes,
just kind of
yes.
know
The
it's
volume. Mhm.
an important issue to people.
Thank you.
I see Susan
Yeah.
Taylor has her hand up also. Maybe that'll be our last question. Susan?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about messaging. I mean, we've got the format, you know, we send emails, we go up and testify. I have lived in Washington, Oregon, and New York, all of which have bottle bills, and it is just, people take it for granted. So it's been, you know, it was a surprise to me when I moved to Rhode Island to discover that we don't pay deposit on bottles. It's just,
Exactly.
it's a whole system that works. And I really appreciate what you're saying about having the handling fee going back to the businesses. Is it offensive at the State House if people come and testify saying, I've lived in these other states and it's not a big deal, folks? You
Yeah.
know, the consumers will adjust to it in the space of 6 months. And I think the businesses will adjust to it quickly enough. How should we frame the messaging? And oh, sorry, I had another follow-up question. Yeah, that's really it. How can we frame the messaging? And then how do we support the small businesses? How do we overcome making them the pawns in this argument?
We're trying to figure that out, like as of
Right.
yesterday. We were
Yeah.
like, wait a
If
minute.
if you're in your liquor store, you could talk to them. If you're,
Oh.
if you're
Happy
in
to
a
do
liquor
that.
store, that you frequent, especially if it's somebody you know, you should ask them and talk to them and,
I just wonder if there's one more way we can, if we can have something that where there's a face-to-face before people get to the State House, because what I found when I was in that situation 7 or 8 years ago was that there was a lot of animosity towards the person who was trying to support the bottle bill. And that again, because they took the platform of being the small business owner, and this is yet again another hit against the small business owner, and it's actually not, but that's what they had been fed. So I haven't thought about it really since then, but I just wonder if there's a way to meet or do something that
have to
educates.
think about that.
this
Maybe-
small
We tried
business
last
owner.
year. After the
But,
hearing, which was pretty heated last year, there were a few of the, not the mom and pops, but the lobbyists that represent some of the bottling industries. They wanted to, because the Environment Committee is pretty strong. In fact, in my 8 or 10 years being in the House and following their activities, we have pretty much the most progressive environmental committee I've ever seen right now.
Yeah.
And so we were strong last year in the hearing and really pushed back on these industries. And so some of the lobbyists approached the sponsor and wanted to come up with some kind of way that they could help experiment with some collection systems, which was
think-
really just all talk.
I think that might be how we got NIPS bill version 2. I
Yeah.
suspect that might have
Yeah.
something to do
So
with,
I
Yeah.
went to those meetings and they were
Yeah.
just,
wasn't too much
there
there.
But
wasn't too much
I
interest.
appreciate the point too about going in and talking to, your local business owner. So if you're somebody who supports the business owner, go in and let your business owner know, say, I frequent your liquor store, but I really support this and I hope that you will too, because this is something that we all need. And I think if the owners start hearing from their customers that it's something that they want, I think that would be valuable.
It's not even the liquor store though, it's the grocery store. That's where, those 5-cent cans or bottles come in. It's the grocery store. The liquor store, most of, at least around here, a lot of what's sold is wine.
Yeah.
But beer is a factor, but it's
Sodas and
But the
Yeah.
same rings true. So if you're going to a local business, and there's a
same-
grocery store in your community, it's, I think it would be helpful for them to hear from their customers that they are supportive and would like to see it in their grocery store.
Okay, so someone, I think, because you can't, if I had gone to the woman that I knew from the grocery store, she was foaming at the mouth with the idea of having to install a 5 cent or 10 cent deposit. And I just wonder if there's a way to make it a little less. I'm all about agitation, but I do think that if there's a way to make it a little less intense to approach these small business owners to say it's okay. I don't know, maybe a piece of paper.
It's a good idea, Nancy. Good
yeah.
idea.
I do wonder, like you said, a piece of paper, like some education for these folks, knowing that they're hearing from their distributors, from their trade associations, and getting some bad information from them.
Right.
And the Just Zero, along with Clean Water Action and a number of other environmental organizations, including Clean Ocean Access, we're all part of Rhode Island Zero Waste Coalition, and we're working up some fact sheets, some handouts on the bottle bill. I mean, that's the type of thing that, like, great, we get them in the hands of legislators, but we could also get them to folks who are interested in supporting the bottle bill for them to give to their local stores, to their liquor stores,
That's
to their
a great
grocery stores,
idea.
to educate those
Yeah.
folks a little more.
Yeah.
We have a Clean Ocean Access function here on March 30th. And if there's a piece of paper that I can hand out while, whoever is
Great.
coming in,
I am happy to
then
do
they
that
can
for
give
you.
it to their grocery store.
That'd be a
Well,
great
what about
idea.
At that event.
What about local newspapers? I mean, what
Local
about local
newspapers.
press? Yeah, I mean, get some journalists, some good journalists to write an article and pitch this. I mean, in Newport, we have the, What's Up Newport, we have Newport This Week, we have, a bunch of local papers that.
We have great local papers, and I think
Yeah,
between the
that
Portsmouth
should be able to take-
Times, this
take
whole
this
group
They should be able to take this up.
also. But I think
Sure.
we as individuals can be handing this stuff out also.
Yes.
Exactly. Wow.
Well, this has been a
Well,
Okay,
lot
but
of
we need that. So we need a piece of paper.
okay.
Not
so-
me.
so
Casey's
Kevin-
working on it for you. Casey's working on it.
Casey or
Yeah,
Kevin?
it's
I
already
think
it's
Okay,
already
Casey.
been Kevin, I believe, is more working on it.
Yes.
And Clean Water Action has kind of put it out. I do have a copy, and Nancy, I will be at the Greenvale event. So I will bring some for you.
Great.
And then they've already been working on it. And anyone that would like to join with that Zero Waste Coalition, we are doing a lobby day on March 9th at 3
March
p.m. So
Yeah,
And
Okay.
where is
thank you.
that?
if
Where is that
things aren't
Thank you for
working for
mentioning
other
that,
days,
Casey.
people aren't there on Wednesday, maybe you want to come join this week
March 9th, where?
At the State House.
at the State House.
Oh, at the
lobby
State
day.
House. Huh,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing
Only
a
one
little
bridge. No, two
launch
bridges.
event around the bottle bill.
Yeah,
And
where
I
is that
just-
taking place, that event, 3 o'clock on Thursday? I had it in my calendar, but I didn't know the details.
It's gonna be in the library.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
Great.
you. Well,
And
we
I
knew that,
put
we knew that,
my,
we knew that Aquidneck
especially
Island folks.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and I just put my email address in the chat too, especially talking about these fact sheets, getting in hands of folks. Like, please reach out to me, and I will print out fact sheets and bring them to you if anybody is interested in handing them out to businesses. So just please let me know.
And if
Great.
anybody has questions about
Thank you,
plastic
Kevin.
pyrolysis, feel free to reach out on that as well. I can put my email address in the chat as well, but please, it's a kind of a complicated topic. And so if you have questions or would like more information, please reach out as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Uh,
gonna ask a really silly question before we all disperse. I think that when we leave these chats, we cannot get the information that has been left on the chat. Is that correct or not?
Sometimes it is hard. It is hard. So maybe I will try before I close the meeting. I'll try to pop them into a Word document so that I have them in one place.
Nancy
And-
at Greenbelt.
And then I can send that out. Hopefully the recording goes without a
that in,
hitch.
put that in.
I've been recording challenged the last couple times, so hopefully I'll get it right this time. And I see the little button that it is recording. So hopefully I could send out an email with
have
the
question.
recording and with some of these comments that
Thank you, Terry.
have been here.
Wait, we have another question. Are you?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that when you set up the Zoom, you can make, there's a button to hit for saving the chat. So people can save it automatically to their computer.
Okay,
Oh,
I'll learn. I'll check
Okay,
it. Thank you.
where,
Yeah, you
where
need to-
is,
yeah.
yeah, where
you.
is that?
Well, when you set up the Zoom and you give all the rules for what the Zoom rules are, there's
Oh,
a,
I see you
there's a
guys.
place
It's
there
on
somewhere
you.
where
Okay.
you can save the chat.
Okay,
know.
all right,
Okay.
good to know.
Thanks,
All
Bonnie.
right,
Well, we knew
Sure.
this would be lively and we're really glad about this. So
yes,
I don't, Terry and I haven't focused in on our next session. I don't think in about 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be around Easter, spring break. So I was
Sometime in
thinking maybe
April.
we'd be looking at like the second to third week of April for our next topic, whatever that is. We haven't chosen yet.
what
April
that would
9th.
be.
April 9th is
April
Easter.
9th is Easter, so you
So
know,
maybe the week after that.
maybe, or the week after that. The week after that is the 23rd, which is the day after Earth Day. So maybe we want to do something around Earth Day there. So we'll start working on this in a few weeks. We'll get another topic together.
Can I also just
right.
throw out a little plug that the Offshore Wind Coalition, I'll be hosting them to do a presentation on offshore wind in Little Compton at the Community Center on March 20th. So there's information on my Instagram or my Facebook page about that if you're interested in more information on offshore wind.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Oh
Michelle,
my
for
gosh.
joining us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good.
And thank you, Kevin, for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin, for
Thanks,
your
Kevin.
time tonight.
Thank you.
And
Thanks
thank
for
you for
having me.
everybody for joining. Great.
Have a good
Thanks.
week.
Have a good week. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
everyone.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Great session, you guys. Just had to say that. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Bye, Terry. Bye,
Bye.
Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Let's see. Record.